as your thing. So the author believes what about choices? May. I'm laughing. We're recording today. Okay. We must be recording since we don't have Crosbyton. Determine. What are the choices we make?
You gotta say that when it.
Go ahead.
Lorenzo has a theme.
Tell me.
Sometimes the decisions you make aren't always the right ones.
Okay. And wouldn't you say that decisions and choices are the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. So that works. I mean, Lorenzo, good job. You guys are on the ball today. Okay. Let's go on and talk about Greasy Lake right now, okay? So we're going to have to skip questions 1 and 2, but if we look at summarize, it says, consider all the plot complications the author introduces to keep the tension in the story mounting. At what point does the story reach its climax, the point of greatest tension? I'm going to go back over here. Let's do a little pyramid-y thing for Greasy Lake. The pyramid plot. Oh, that's the wrong thing. That's where I just added the vegetable story of an hour on there for y'all, okay? All right, so here's our pyramid. This is fun to try to, you can tell I'm not an artist, okay. So, the exposition is we've got the 3 boys, bad boys, okay, the 3 boys who are bad. They're smoking weed, drinking, and they're headed to Greasy Lake. I'm just going to call it GL. The rising action here is they see a buddy's car. I don't know, his name is Tony Lovett's car, TL's car, and they flash their lights, and they honk the horn, and they interrupt a romantic liaison. Interrupt a couple. We'll just call it that, all right? So our climax then is you've got the fight going on, because I don't see the fight as the climax yet. For me, the climax is when the narrator hits I'm trying to think if she ever hollers his name. It hits the bad guy with the tire iron, and he's afraid he's killed him. Our narrator's afraid he's killed him. The falling action, it kind of moves faster, and this is true of a lot of when you go down the pyramid or you're moving to the conclusion of a story, is where they attempt to rape the girl. Another car drives up. The Mustang drives up, I believe. And they destroy the station wagon. And the narrator finds the dead body. Or I get who was Al, okay? Okay. And then the conclusion, the resolution is basically Al's sister and friend, and they don't want to party. Okay? So there's a lot going on in there, and I get tickled, you know, when you hear about, you don't normally think of bad guys driving their mother's station wagon, you know, as they're going to go out and go party. Some wonderful descriptions in there. Boyle, he says he doesn't revise, but if he revises as he goes along. He never, after he's done with it, he never goes back to it. But it is, there's some powerful descriptions in here that, you know, it's just very, he's got a way with words, and they bring images into your mind, which is why I like it. There are some great ones. Then I thought of the dead man. He was the only person on the, what does it says, one of the pullouts. He was probably the only person on the planet worse off than I was. Okay, so is the story resolved? Do y'all think it's resolved?
With Greasy Lake, I don't think the ends are wrapped up. We still have no reason no idea who killed Al, why he was at Greasy Lake, who the junkies were in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the amount of drugs and stuff that are being talked about. I mean, the girls offer them some pills. I'm assuming it's uppers. I don't know. I was not into that scene. And very much, for some reason, this feels like a Jersey Shore kind of story to me. I don't know why. There's something about these characters, you know, trying to appear to be bad guys, and all I can think of is those kids that are on Jersey Shore, and Mike the Situation, isn't that his name? Y'all are almost too young to have watched that, right? Correct? I didn't watch it, so I just know he's been on some other things, and Snooki was on the Celebrity Apprentice, so. But it kind of has that feel to me that, you know, and I'm sorry, guys are just not scary driving their mother's station. Makes me worry about all the times I let my children, when they were in college, take my car and go somewhere in it. So it makes me regret that. So we know on question 2 it says, when the narrator wades into the lake, he blundered into something unspeakable, obscene. What does he blunder into? He blunders into Al, that dead body. And what effect does it have on him? It scares him spitless, but it does make him realize things could be worse. And how does this plot complication differ from the other? You know, he was afraid, the narrator was afraid that he had killed the bad guy that was in the car. And here somebody's actually dead. So maybe, I don't know, there's something to do with about bad and pretending to be bad going on here. What do y'all think? Did you like the story? I mean, most of you aren't born until, some of you weren't even born until 2000, am I correct? Connor, Hunter, Sarah, you're all juniors, right? So you're like, are you 17 yet?
I'm not yet.
Okay. So much of this, I mean, you get the feeling this is the early 1980s. And when they're describing the girls, I can remember I student taught in the 80s, okay, and worked on my master's. But I can remember the 80s hair where they had these huge bangs. Maybe your facilitators right remember the kids from the 80s. Their bangs, the girls' bangs stuck up. And they would be, I mean, if you go back and look at, it's very Cyndi Lauper-ish, Madonna when she first became popular. The hair on the girls was pretty high, as was the hair on the guys. There was this poofiness to it. I guess it was a outflow of the 70s and disco or something. Smire, you had questions 3 and 4. Analyze craft. Describe how Boyle reveals the character's context. What is the socioeconomic status of the 3 main characters?
I'm sorry, Monday the connection cut out, and then when you came back, we didn't hear our questions. We thought we were doing 5 and 6, and then the class ended.
Okay, so, but we've read the story. Look at your narrator. Let's go back and do it together, okay? It happens. It shouldn't be hard. Digby wore a gold star in his right ear and allowed his father to pay his tuition to Cornell. Cornell, you guys know what Cornell is? What a school association like the Big 12 it's in? Do y'all have any idea what it's in, Cornell? It's right up there with Harvard and Princeton and Yale. So that would be Ivy League. So what socioeconomic status are these guys from?
The wealthy.
Yeah, these are wealthy kids, even though he's driving. Okay, upper middle class, possibly. And the fact that we're talking about universities back east also helps place us in that eastern portion of the United States. So for setting, and Greasy Lake obviously is a setting. So what clues does Boyle give to reveal this? He talks about the university one's going to. And when you look at some of the references that the narrator gives us, tremendous numbers of allusions in his writing. It's like something as simple as talking about the word choices. He uses a more sophisticated word than a less sophisticated word. And look at paragraph 2 on page 189. It's looking at the very end of it, where he's talking about starting at the bottom of the left column. We went up to the lake because everyone went there because we wanted to snuff the rich scent of possibility on the breeze, watch a girl take off her clothes and plunge into the festering murk, drink beer, smoke pot, howl at the stars, savor the incongruous, full-throated roar of rock and roll against the primeval susurrus of frogs and crickets. This was nature. That's not the language of a street tough. That's not what the guy in the 57 Chevy who's having a good time with his girlfriend, those are not the words he's going to use. Okay? Those are the words of an educated individual. And you tend to run around with the people who are like you. So there's a couple of ways Boyle does it. He directly kind of gives us the clue when he says where they go to school. He also uses it with his word choice for what the boys say. Though some of the words in here are not very nice. Don't ask me to read them out loud. So that's one of the ways you get that, okay? So analyzing voice. In the first paragraph, he describes what it means to be bad. Does his voice throughout the story suggest he thinks of himself as a bad guy? What do y'all think? Does he think of himself, at the time the story took place, did the narrator think of himself as a bad guy?
I don't think so.
Not a bad, well, it's that wannabe bad guy. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those deals that, the longer you live, the funnier people become to me, I guess. And particularly the young people in their need to establish an identity. It's like I was talking with a young girl who has a nose ring, and I said, "Why did you get it? Give me a reason why you got it." And she gave me a legitimate reason. I said, "Okay, that makes sense. If you got a nose ring because you wanted to look cool, that's not necessarily the best reason to get a nose ring." So it's like getting tattoos. It's like getting piercings. And I'm not talking about, maybe piercing your ear 17 or 18 times, because I know some people that have done that are really nice people. But there's that whole notion that what we do outwardly will make us into the type of person we want to be. So these guys are pretend bad guys, aren't they? They do the things that they think bad guys do. They smoke, they drink, they talk big talk, they talk bad language because it makes you sound like you're a tough guy, right? And they're so far from it that it's almost laughable. Okay, so Lorenzo and Smyer, you both answered 5 and 6 then for me. Greasy Lake is written in past tense, presumably sometime after the events of the story. How does this distance affect the tone of the story? The tone is how the author feels about a subject. How does Boyle, if he's writing about himself, or how does the narrator in the present feel about himself in the past? What kind of feeling do you get from the narrator about how he looks back on that time? Did he like himself?
We thought maybe like regretful for his actions and everything.
Towards the end, there is that kind of feel, isn't there? There's a little bit of regret in there, and it says, "I looked back," which is kind of interesting in the very last paragraph. I looked back, and then the last image he leaves us with is the girl was still standing there watching us, her shoulders slumped, hand outstretched. You know, like missed opportunity, or could he have at least said, "Hey, go look in the lake. Your brother's there," something? Okay. How would it sound differently if he had written it in present tense, as if it were happening now?
We wouldn't get all the feelings and emotions maybe of like the regret he feels and kind of what he learned from it.
And think about it, it would be, wouldn't you have even more frightening if he, the immediacy of he falls in the mud, and that wonderful description of how he's laying in the mud and it's up all around himself. I was trying to think of what it was. The water, I'm looking on page 192. And it's in the middle of paragraph 20. He goes, as I was about to take the plunge, he was going to get in the water and swim. At the very instant I dropped my shoulder for the first slashing stroke, I blundered into something unspeakable, obscene, something soft, wet, moss-grown. A patch of weed, a log. When I reached out to touch it, it gave like a rubber duck. It gave like flesh. So if you switch it from past tense, so you're separated just a little bit by that past tense verb, it gives. I touched it and it gave. My hands touched it, and it, the rubberiness of it would make it much more immediate, much more, I would think, gross in one sense. And one of those nasty little epiphanies for which we are prepared by films and TV and childhood visits to the funeral home to ponder the shrunken painted forms of dead grandparents, I understood what it was that bobbed there so inadmissibly in the dark. Understood and stumbled back in horror and revulsion. My mind yanked in 6 different directions. I was 19, a mere child, an infant, and here in the space of 5 minutes I'd struck down one greasy character and blundered into the waterlogged carcass of a second. Thinking, the keys, why did I have to go out and lose the keys? Just some really intense writing by Boyle. So that it would become much more, I think, repugnant and much more scary. I think when they're attempting to rape the girl, thank heavens that car drives up at the last second and saves her. And it's her brother. It's her brother, I believe. And there's, all kinds of wild and crazy things. It's kind of cool. So a 19-year-old telling the story is probably not also going to use the same words. So it might lose some of that, as you're saying, the regret that comes through the use of the higher words. So discuss the relationship between plot and character. When the girl arrives at the end of the story, the boys turn down the chance to party with them. Because as Boyle says in his interview, these boys have their legs between their tails. Their tails between their legs. I'll get that out right. Why do they now have their tails between their legs?
I think they realized that they really couldn't hang out with the actual bad guys, since they aren't really bad guys.
Are there some words you get that kind of give you the clue? Look on the bottom of 193. It's the paragraph that begins at the bottom. I was circling the car as dazed and bedraggled as the sole survivor of an air blitz. When Digby, there's a nice allusion, an air blitz, a reference to World War II. When Digby and Jeff emerged from the trees behind me, Digby's face was cross-hatched with smears of dirt. Jeff's jacket was gone and his shirt was torn across the shoulder. Whatever the battle, they lost it, didn't they? They slouched. Think about that term. They're not standing upright proud like we're big bad guys. When you're slouched, you're the defeated one. They slouched across the lot looking sheepish, there's another word that gives it to you, and silently came up beside me to gape at the ravaged automobile. No one said a word. After a while, Jeff swung open the driver's door and began to scoop the broken glass and garbage off the seat. I looked at Digby. He shrugged. At least they didn't slash the tires, he said. It was true. The tires were intact. There was no windshield, the headlights were staved in, and the body looked as if it had been sledgehammered for a quarter a shot at the county fair. But the tires were inflated to regulation pressure. The car was drivable. In silence, all three of us bent to scrape the mud and shattered glass from the interior. I said nothing about the biker, so he doesn't mention to his buddies that he's found that dead body. When we were finished, I reached in my pocket for the keys, experienced a nasty stab of recollection, cursed myself, and turned to search the grass. I spotted him almost immediately, no more than 5 feet from the open door, glinting like jewels in the first tapering shaft of sunlight. There was no reason to get philosophical about it. I eased into the seat and turned the engine over. It's almost as if fate decided to teach these bad boys a lesson, didn't it? Okay. All right. Good story. It makes me, I would like to read more of his stuff. So our next story then was the story of an hour, which we actually got to watch the vegetable version of. Story of an hour is on 150 and 152. Kate Chopin is an interesting author to talk about. She writes, she lives from 1851 to 1904. A lot of her writing is considered fin de siècle, which is the turn of the century or the end of a century. That it's a French term, and so that there's this certain philosophy you get when a century ends. Most of you don't remember the Y2K scare. We were all worried about what's going to happen to all the computers, you know, when it flipped over to January 1st. Okay, they were just telling me that I was checking to see what they're saying. You know, Crosby sent us down, so they're trying to work on that. She writes at the end of the century, much of what she writes, and so there's this melancholy, this fear of what the future's going to bring as you come into a new century. But if you stop and think about it, the dates are just something that mankind has assigned to time. It's not this holy pronouncement that came from the universe, God, the force, whoever. We've just arbitrarily set these dates on stuff because man's attempt to name things and control them is a way. Well, it's all about control. If we can give something a date, then we now have control over it. Stop to think about it. That's why we name things. It's like, you know. Why we do that. It's about our need to control nature. So she writes about the turn of the century, and we're talking the 19th century. So what are the roles? What roles can women have in the 19th century? What options does a woman have in her life? Any ideas?
They don't really have much option besides staying home and being the housekeeper, pretty much.
I mean, you could maybe wash clothes for a living. You could be a servant to someone else. That sounds like a lot of fun. And you think you get paid minimum wage to work at Sonic? You can, at least Sonic, you get tips. You know, you're working as a servant to somebody else. Your hours are longer. You have to be up before they get up. You have to stay up until after they've gone to bed. Prostitution, that's not a job that's going to go on and last very long. Nursing's not really out there as an opportunity yet. For a woman to be a nurse, she was almost exiled. Actresses were just considered a higher form of prostitution. So there's just not a lot of opportunities out there. So Kate Chopin writes, and she writes a lot about married women. And so the story of an hour reflects that. And so we saw that wonderful little vegetable version. It is written, what's the narrative? When you look at it, knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. So your narrator is going to be what? First, second, or third person?
Third person.
Third person. Now, do we get everybody's interior thoughts in this?
No, just Miss Mallard's.
So it's a third person limited omniscience. So that it kind of distances it, it makes it a little bit different, and they talk about that. Does the narrator, and that, so there's a question in here up at the top, it says, do you think the narrator tells the story objectively or with a bias?
I think she tells it with a bias.
With a bias? Okay. Is she biased?
Because she is a woman herself.
So you're saying the narrator is female. Okay. That's an interesting thought. Why do you think it's female? I'm just going to ask.
I guess just because the way it goes into description, just about how Miss Mallard feels.
Okay. This is considered to be one of the best short stories ever written. You know, if we were gonna, let's plot this one real quick. I just took all my extra paper and stuck it somewhere. What do I do with it? Let's see. Let's just do it on the board behind me, okay? Oh, I haven't stood so long, my feet went to sleep. This purple looks good. And obviously you can't see what I just did. That is not dark enough, sorry. I'll get it black. Okay, so the exposition, and let me get my chair out of the way. Your exposition here is you've got train wreck. You've got the characters of Brenda Mallard, Louise Mallard, her sister Josephine, and Richard. Brenda Mallard's dead. Now that maybe comes along later. Let's see. We'll just do that. So the train wreck, so you have need to tell Louise Mallard. Okay. She waits, goes to room, looks out window. The climax, free. And you can see how men in 1900 would not like for a woman to realize that she's free when her husband dies. And then they give us the reasons. No one, you can live, sorry. You can live for yourself. Loved him sometimes. And so I'm very struck because I have several friends in my Sunday school class who've had husbands who have been ill, and they've had to take care of them through devastating illnesses. And so there's that. She calls it a monstrous joy. That wonderful oxymoron about how it's horrible that you're feeling a positive emotion because somebody's died. But if you have to take care of somebody through a debilitating illness, there's a lot of stress on your body. Many times when that happens, the caregiver doesn't survive either because they've had to expend so much energy to help the other one out. And it could be a man or it's either way. It could be a husband taking care of a wife or a wife taking care of a husband. It's just in my case, it's been wives taking care of husbands that I know about. But that's a wonderful oxymoron, that monstrous joy. She loved him sometimes, and then you have sister Josephine shows up, and I walk downstairs, and there's that wonderful phrase, like winged victory. Have any of you ever been to Austin, to UT, to the campus, and the fountain that's right across the street from where they have so many of the UIL academic stuff, things at for the state meet. There's that, it's the, I've even got pictures of it, taken of students there. It's the naval victory, honoring all the people in the Navy who have served. It kind of has that image to me. But it says, there was a feverish, and I think this is a clue, there was a feverish triumph in her eyes. Well, that pencil doesn't work. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she carried herself unwittingly like a goddess of victory. Not winged, but goddess of victory. It must be the one in Austin, maybe winged. Goddess of victory, okay? So, a goddess is not human. It's interesting. And then you have Brantley walking in the door, and then she falls down dead. Louise Mallard dies of joy that kills. Okay? So, I don't even know if y'all can see that very well. So, the train wreck, here's your exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, going down, and then you have the resolution or denouement. Okay? Sometimes it helps if you can do those kind of things, look at what's going on. See it as interesting. So my question for you is, when the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, a joy that kills. Is that what killed her? Was it the joy at seeing her husband alive? Was she happy?
No, ma'am.
So what kills her?
The fear of not being free anymore.
Yeah, the loss of freedom. And again, this is Chopin who, when she begins the awakening, has two songbirds in a cage. So for her, women lose their freedom. Marriage does that to them. And so what's interesting is that we also have another story of hers that was to be read for today, The Storm, on page 279 and 283, which is a different perspective. So let's see. I don't know if there's any other questions that... So let's go look at The Storm, page 279. And what I'm going to do, let's see, where are we at time? Let's see, 8:42. Let's do this right now so that I don't forget to get it done. This one's a little bit longer. It's not quite as negative an image of marriage. It's actually a different kind of viewpoint for her. But it's very interesting. Let's do this, okay? Since I've only got 3 schools, Smyer, 1 and 2, do questions 1 and 2 for The Storm, okay? Wellman Union, do 3 and 4, and Lorenzo, do 5 and 6, okay? Oh, this is interesting. I said if you like The Storm, you might also like T.C. Boyle's Greasy Lake, which we've already read, and Kate Chopin's Herald of a Career Coming to an Abrupt End, admits the scandal created by publication of her sexually explicit novel, The Awakening, and stories like The Storm, which could not be published in her lifetime. She actually went into People Were Not Read, and then the feminists in the 60s found her stories, and she became popular again because she's very much a woman's writer. Nothing like Louisa May Alcott, which, by the way, there was a question about her on Jeopardy yesterday. Kind of pathetic. So, and we'll come together and work on that. And happy endings. Let's also do the questions on happy endings. That's pages 514 and 515. Another short one. Very, very contemporary in nature. A It's almost like text messages, isn't it? And there are no questions. Just for happy endings, let's figure out a theme, okay, for everybody. Okay, so let me make a note here. Questions on the storm. And I want to remind you that you have, I know we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh yeah, we'll finish all these stories by next week. Don't worry. We'll get through them fast, okay? You're like, maybe we won't. Well, we'll try. If we don't, we don't. We'll just extend it, so don't worry about that. You have a Connect assignment due Friday. It is up and available. It's on commas part 1, commas part 2. Just because that's, you know, an easy way for you to get points. It opens up, I think, about 7:30 Friday morning, and it's open till midnight, okay? So do a theme for questions in the storm, and theme for happy endings, okay? That's for 2-6. And then we're going to fly through Love in LA, the Mandelston rain clouds, and everyday use, okay? And y'all got any questions for me? Well, let's see. We've only got about 4 minutes left. So one of the things I will go over is characters. We'll flash through. We'll do that very shortly in the we won't do the whole PowerPoint. We'll just go through it very quickly because you do need to know what kind of characters there are. Flat, static, round, dynamic, all those kind of things, okay? We'll go over that. All righty. Y'all have a good weekend. Stay out of trouble. I know it feels odd to say that on a Wednesday, doesn't it? And I will, the Love in LA text, oh, why is that? Oh, why is that there? Okay. I will email all the facilitators the PowerPoint, okay? On characterization. So if I have to back up dates, that won't upset you guys, will it? Go back over here. Well, that's good to know. We don't have to mess with that one. Okay. I'm going to see which one. We'll just do one of them. I've got characterization and characterization development. Let me see which one's better. Okay, that one's all right. That did not happen. Okay. Y'all got any questions for me? No, looks like it's already heading out there. All right. I'll see you guys Monday. Be sure and have those questions done.
By when is the PowerPoint for these short stories due?
It is not due until 2/12 by midnight on Sunday the 12th, okay?
Okay, thank you, Miss Thompson. Have a good day.
You're welcome. All right. See y'all Monday. Okay. Okay. Go back over there and open that again. Save that one. about then? Print, character, 7 type, 13, okay. Alright. So what I want, my mail. Where's my folder? How's it going, Jenna?
It's gonna be late.
Ah, you're early. We still got 10 minutes till class.
I woke up and I was like, oh crap.
Let's see. Alright, I'm doing some email.
Did you still have the same video on stuff?
Yeah, it's still there.
I couldn't find it.
You have to scroll down, let me see where it's at. It is, how to find theme, it's the second thing.
On the...
And like, when you hit short story unit, the short story unit menu button, it's the, so here I am, here's short story over here, I clicked on it, it's how to find theme,
Okay.
okay? It's right there. I am,
I was working on my themes last night and I couldn't find that video.
it's basically what's in that handout. You make a list of topics for the story, then you decide which topic you want to deal with, and you go from there. Mail, okay, let's see. New. To price, our edit, our Chase. I have 3 of my facilitators at 8 o'clock in the morning, their names start with R.